know you're a very busy man now, so I shouldn't take so much of your time, but I have 23 questions.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Okay.
And
I feel like I should have come with some questions. I have probably have way more than 23 questions.
Well,
we'll do part 2. I'll come up with my 23 questions.
Yes, or you can have one question after one question of mine.
Okay.
Yes. No, I think yes, there are a lot of questions because it's almost like someone from another planet just sort of arrived on a spaceship, and it's very curious. But
that's what's to me actually one of the most interesting parts about this is because nobody in the fine art world knew about me, but millions of people in the broader sort of like digital art world, like those people all knew about me.
Well, that is somewhere around question number 18.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of you. We're getting ahead of you.
I wanted to ask you about that actually, because how we attribute value to numbers and what that means, is a question, because from a philosophical perspective, it's not a given that if 10 million people know something, it's somehow deeper knowledge. I mean, quantum physics is known by very few people. Yep. And the most important quantum physics, how many people know who Anton Zeilinger is? And without Anton Zeilinger, there's no quantum computing, because he's the one who did that funny connection between the two islands, but that was sort of way down the line of these questions.
Okay, I won't, sorry.
Really simple things. And I want to get to know you a little bit, as much as you wish me to get to know you, precisely because I also was startled by the fact that I didn't know who you were. But I must confess that one of my digital communications consultants in Torino about a year ago mentioned a few names of artists, and one of the people he mentioned was you. And I just okay.
In what context was he mentioning me?
Well, I was having a meeting with the university here, the Politecnico, and I was about to apply for some funds to be able to offer to young artists to be able to work on AI in their work, in artificial intelligence.
Yep.
So, because we don't have any computing capacity at the museum, obviously.
Gotcha.
And so I wanted to give some tools to artists who may want to use them. But he was somehow preparing me. I said, you've got to give me some information here, what's going on? And I think one of the things he did mention, I mean, I'm sure, was your name. And I remember I was surprised by it, because Winkelmann is the name of the philosopher who defined art, actually. In terms
I saw that in the New Yorker thing. I did not, obviously.
But there wasn't anything called art until Winkelmann.
Basically, that is very interesting. That is very. Wait, what year was that?
Mid 1700s.
Mid 1700s? What?
Yes. In other words,
what did they call the sculptures before then?
They called them sculpture. They called it craft. The first artist who signed with his own name an artwork was Leonardo.
Really?
Yes. Up until that, Giotto and all the rest of it, they were in some civilizations called image makers. The ancient Greeks, they called making what we call art, they called it techne. It's funny because techne in Greek is the root of technology too. But it was called techne, and it was not given the authority that we have given to art after the 1700s. For them,
authority meaning what? When you say authority, what do you mean by that?
Well, now I had 23 questions here.
Okay, sorry. I told you I had way more questions than you. I told you.
Whole thing about, because you said in some article that you were happy to get a crash course on the last 100 years. And I said, tell him that I'm happy to give him the crash course if he'd like.
I would love that. Honestly, I find it very, very interesting now. It's such a like different world, with different rules and different norms and different sort of important people and important figures. And it's not, art history is not, some questions that I thought were solved are not exactly solved, I guess. Let's say that. And so when people approached me and they were like, well, this is not art, and it's like, really? You're gonna say this is, like, you could say it's bad, you don't like, but you're just saying it's not art at all. But I was just like,
well, I'm not sure. I actually wanted to have a conversation with you because I want to figure out if it is art and if it can be, especially because now in my last question, I was gonna do this as a last question, but I'm gonna do it right away because I think it will make you feel much better.
I'm fine. So here's the other thing. I'll tell you this. I'm not easily offended. So whatever you say, just say whatever you want. It's not going to offend me.
No, the last question I was going to ask you was about Andy Warhol, because I have a feeling that you might be an Andy Warhol of today. In other words, Andy Warhol had no idea of what art was. And he went to a very normal school in Pittsburgh, and his parents had no connection with art. And he studied graphic design and got a job in a graphic design company. Most notably, he was drawing shoes for magazines. And then he went to New York and got a job in an advertising company as a graphic designer again for shoes and other things. And somehow, but I don't know who, and I don't know how, but somehow there must have been a moment where he crossed over, and it was not a sale of a Christie's at that time, more or less. And a lot of people were saying that's not art, because the artists who were famous at the time were the abstract expressionists, who were expressing their inner selves in this way, like Jackson Pollock dripping. So this guy who came from Pittsburgh and absolutely, was from another planet, and he somehow changed the whole art world, because he said, but the one thing that he did was he brought those techniques from the graphic design into the high art world, but he made mistakes. In other words, the silk screen had never been used in art, but usually you make silk screens match up, but he made them not match up. So the fact that it was kind of blurry, the Marilyn Monroe or whatever, suddenly it was no longer graphic design, but it wasn't a painting, it was some weird thing. And then came the Campbell soups, and then came the factory, and then came a revolution in art. So that was going to be my last question, to say, what do you think? And he also came from a Catholic background, which is kind of interesting in a very Protestant country, the US, because I also look at the US in a very sometimes distant way, even though I was born in the US, but came back anyway. But so that was, I said that to you now because I think it might explain why I don't have any prejudice. I'm actually really,
no, I don't think you do either. Honestly, you reached out to sort of like talk to me, like that's, I don't think that at all. I actually think you're just curious and whatever. And like,
well, anyway, then I'm going to ask the first question.
Okay.
Well, it was about actually your personal life and your early childhood, and why you moved to Charleston, because it's very cold up in that place, and it's very hot down in South Carolina.
It's very hot. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, so at the time we moved, so my brother worked out in Boeing in Charleston here, and so a few years ago, like I was already sort of doing freelance and working from home, and so it's kind of like, okay, we could live anywhere. So it's like, why don't we, we visited him down in Charleston here, so it's like, well, why don't we come down to Charleston, and like, it's cheap, we can live out in the suburbs or whatever, and it's the weather's way nicer, and it's like, I would rather have it be really hot than really cold, because it's like, it's really hot, you go swimming, it's really cold, you die, you literally just freeze to death and die. Like it's not quite the same. So I really like it down here. It's like, you know, just much better fit for us. So it's definitely nice.
I see. And so it wasn't like you met someone and married her and she was from Strauss.
Oh, no. I've been married for 10, 12, what year is it? 11 years, I think. 11 years, and I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. So we're and my brother's got kids and stuff too. So yeah, I'm 39. Nice. So yeah, I've been married for a bit.
Yeah, very nice. So in a way, you're an example of this homeworking. I mean, now the whole world has experienced homeworking.
Yeah, this is my house. Like, this is my kids' rooms are, 2 doors away. Like, I'm very much in the home. And this is where I like create all the stuff. Up until very recently with like the physicals, everything was done like, just sitting at the computer here.
Yeah, so in a way, the whole planet is experiencing what was normal for you.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, even before COVID, I would go days without leaving the house. It would be like, oh shit, it's Thursday. Fuck, I haven't gone anywhere since Sunday. And it was just like, because I work so much. And then I would sort of intersperse with that, I would also go and like kind of travel quite a bit. And then sort of like, I would stay home, work, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd go and do a talk at like a design conference. Right. And all over the world or whatever. So it was kind of like staying home. Like, I don't know anybody in Charleston. I don't really have any friends in this city besides, obviously my brother or whatever. I don't know anybody around here. I honestly don't really have that much of an interest to kind of go make friends or whatever. So the design conferences were nice, breaking things up there, but obviously that kind of.
Yeah. Well, that opens a question. Do you look forward to another question, a sub question? Do you look forward to the end of, well, of course you look forward to the end of COVID, but what I mean is, do you look forward, what do you think is missing in the relations in the professional world without the conferences and doing them all online and so forth?
Yeah, I just think, I mean, to me, honestly, the conferences were mostly about, like, when I would go to conferences, I would almost never go to anybody's talks. Like, I'm not going to see talks at all. I'm going to like talk to people, like one-on-one, like, let's talk. Like, that's what I was going to do, is like meet people and just sort of like more like social time too, because again, I could watch your talk on YouTube afterwards. Like, I'm there to like be in person and see people like in person. So that, to me, there's no, the Zoom calls, this is nice, but it would be a much nicer if we were just sitting in the same room.
For sure. And
I don't think you can recreate that.
Well, I look very much forward to welcoming you when you come to Europe.
I love Italy. I would absolutely love it. I love Italy. Like, I would love, and I've never been to that city, so that would be amazing.
Great, fantastic. So now, the other question, the second one was, I'm just jumping from one subject to the other, and then we can go back. But now I'm going to say things that are really banal, probably for you. And I do feel a little embarrassed because I don't know so much of, let's call it, in this case, popular culture. But I would like to know in what way the aesthetic of sci-fi movies, because I see that in your work, and how's that? In your interviews, you talk about daily events, things that you see on CNN and so on, but the aesthetics are not from that at all. And so what are the fictional worlds and the visual references that you employ and that inspire the style? And, I think sometimes even Mad Max might be something that you looked at, and maybe something like Oblivion with Tom Cruise, and maybe even Her, strangely enough, but that's for another reason. Or Transcendence, with Johnny Depp. And so I'm kind of wondering what your visual aesthetic realm comes from.
Yeah, I would say it comes from like things like that, movies, and also there's a lot of sort of, kind of, I'm very influenced by what other people are doing too, I think, which is a lot of like digital artists, because it is so easy to be shared. I think that is like digital art. When I say digital art, I'm defining it as art made roughly over the last 20 years, made almost solely on not solely on a computer, but mostly on a computer with a few different sort of, Photoshop, 3D software, some video elements, this or that, but it's mostly a computer and it's distributed on the internet. That's how I'm sort of defining digital art, for the purpose of this conversation or whatever. So I think because digital art is shared a lot, it is sort of like, it does kind of evolve, and it evolves very fast because of that. And so trends very, very quickly can, like, just over the course of 6 months or a year, it can be like everybody does this thing and it goes on to the next thing. So I'm definitely sort of influenced by that stuff. I'm also kind of doing my own thing a little bit more. And I also have, to be honest, a big influence on digital art sort of like space. Like, tons and tons of people have started everydays because of my everydays, to the point where it got kind of like, oh, you're doing everydays, that's lame. Like, it got like not cool. It was so many people doing everydays.
But what my question, I'm going to talk about the everydays and that question of time and a ritual and a periodic repetition or not repetition in a little bit later. What I was just wondering is, okay, so if the influences come from this, let's call it a meme culture,
Sure,
where people are making collages and going back and forth, are there any particular digital artists that have influenced you? And I still want to know if the cinema, because films are also a lot made digitally anyway.
sure. I would say some films and in some films, I would say, honestly, I would say the biggest thing was definitely Star Wars. I think had like the biggest influence on me and like most people in this space. I think that sort of like view of technology and that sort of like aesthetic of technology is very sort of definitely influential in my work, and I think a lot of people. In terms of individual artists, I honestly am influenced by so many different artists that it's kind of like, if I point you at one or two, it's going to be misleading. That it's sort of like, wow, they're just kind of like fit into a tiny area.
Okay. What about Christopher Nolan and Inception or the recent Tenet?
I haven't even seen Tenet yet, to be quite honest. I wouldn't say, I mean, I like those movies, but I wouldn't say they're very influential.
Okay, so it's more, but Mad Max?
I liked it. I wouldn't say it's that influential.
Okay, so Star Wars, but the movies, the remakes of Star Wars.
The movies, but I wouldn't even honestly say the movies that much. I think I'm more sort of influenced by other sort of work that I see, that I consume and see, and it's kind of like, I'll take a little tiny like idea from this. I'm like a little like, oh, I never thought about making a shape like that, or like putting a shape like that with something like that. It could be something very, very small like that, but it's not as much movies or TV shows or anything like that, as looking at other people's work. And sometimes that work is like, it's for video games too. Like, it could be like, oh, here's this like thing that I made for this video game. And there's like a site. If you go to a site, have you ever heard of a site called ArtStation?
Yes, I actually have.
Yeah, ArtStation has like a ton of like sort of like people who are like very good at their like craft or whatever. And so that is a place that has like a lot of sort of like inspiration that I find.
Okay. Now, slowly moving on, I wanted to know about, let's call it, how do you say, high art film, or film that has not been liked by masses of people.
Sure.
But that has been very important in the history of cinema. And so things like Tarkovsky's Solaris, have you seen that?
Yeah, the like 80s version of the thing. I don't remember it that much. Everybody was dead, or everybody was something, or I can't remember it. Everybody was, there was a weird twist. I don't remember what the twist.
Yeah, well, it's 1972, and it's sort of the Russian counterpoint to 2001, A Space Odyssey. I mean, they were made very short time difference during the Cold War. And so I was for example, one of the earliest weird movies is from 1962 by a man called Chris Marker, and it's called La Jetée. It's the story of the future, and it was redone in 12 Monkeys and all that. It was a story of a future, dystopic future, that a scientist has to go back to the past to fix it, to then move forward. So all of the, to fix the present. So all of those movies come out of this thing called La Jetée. Well, if maybe I'll send you, who knows, I might put a virus in your sources. I'll send you a link to that. It's actually slides. It's still slides. And anyway, so
There's probably a digitized version on like YouTube or something.
Of course, I think there is, of course. It's a 19th, anyway, I'll send you that in a WhatsApp. And what about the Dutch Lars von Trier?
I love that dude. I love that dude.
Great.
Yeah, he is very, very like, is he the one that did the Dogma 95?
Yes, exactly. Dogma.
Okay, 95. Yeah. That was very, very influential with me when I was like very early starting out, because the rule system, I really, really like that rule system. And I really, really like the idea of sort of just, it is what it is, taking, like, there's some elements of like, I think one of them was like, you can't put a light in a room, that it's got to be like all like natural lighting, like things like that. I really like, because it takes the control out of your hands, and it's to me, that's very interesting, and it fits with the way that I look at art, that it is entirely subjective. And so like just making that choice to let it just be whatever the fuck it is, there was that was definitely a big part of a lot of the very early art that I made before the Everydays, because I actually started making art in like 1999. So about 8 years before the Everydays, and I made a bunch of short films and a ton of stuff. So that early stuff was very much influenced by like him and his movies and stuff.
That's interesting. Giving yourself rules, as a kind of way of bringing in anything. There was a novelist also, Perec, a French novelist, Georges Perec, who kind of built his novels that way. But did you see Lars von Trier's more recent, well, it's not that recent, it's almost it's 10 years ago, the Melancholia, a satellite that's crashing into the earth.
Slowly?
Yeah, slowly.
Yeah.
Slowly.
I think it is, and they're having like weddings or something, like they're just kind of like in like this very nice place, and it's like dark most of the time or something. Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, well, that's one of my favorite movies, by the way.
I think did he do that one? I think it was him, maybe it was not. It was like a play, and it was like all of the like all of these like it was like drawn on the ground, was like all these rooms, and it had
Dogville.
Oh, that was that him?
Yeah,
oh my god, that's one of my like absolute favorites. That is just like so good. I love that.
You see, there you go. I mean, that's like the best cinema on the planet.
Good.
That's what you call high film. So I mean, the fact that you're being pigeonholed into this person who would only,
well, when I see people be like, you're a tech bro.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, but now, anyway, now that we've assessed that, I'd move to another. I mean, there's 100 films we could talk about, but at least we found a way. We went from, at least we found that common ground of a great filmmaker. So I'm going to ask you something which actually has to do with thinking about why you use bad words. How do you say?
Cursing, swearing.
Cursing, swearing. Yeah. And that is in all the articles. You haven't done it yet, and in this conversation. But I wanted to ask you something about that, because not about that, but something else which may cause that. Do you know something called the imposter syndrome?
And just where everybody kind of thinks that they're sort of like, an imposter, and sort of, they're fake and they're whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's imposter syndrome when you underestimate yourself, generally when you're exploring a new community or a new world where you don't feel really comfortable with everything. And sometimes the most talented people or the most creative people, actually, if you look into their souls, they have moments where everything that they're showing outside of security and the self-assuredness is actually because inside there's this feeling that no matter what they're doing, they're not quite supposed to be there, you know.
Sure.
That somehow they had good luck, you know, good
Yep.
luck. Yeah. Do you ever feel, I mean, I have felt that many times throughout my
Yeah,
life.
I think everybody feels it to some degree. I would say I feel that sometimes. I mean, I think I do and I don't. It's sort of like complicated. I definitely feel like people's expectations, like there's a lot of people who, you know, obviously really like my work, but I think sometimes I think their standards are too low. It's like, no, it's not that good. Like you just kind of like, I don't know. I sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I think it depends on the moment. I would definitely not say that it's all the time, but it's definitely not none of the time either.
Right. It's something that often very talented and brilliant people have, especially during adolescence, you know, when they're young. And
Sure.
So it has to do with performativity and so forth. So I'm wondering if the swear words are, you know, in a Freudian sense, kind of something that can break that somehow.
I think I think the swear words are honestly just like that's how I talk. And then I think it's also I'm very like I don't know. I feel like it's also gotten to a point where I'm like my vocabulary is just going lower and lower, and it's just like I'm replacing more words with swear words, and it's like my ability to express myself has actually gotten worse and worse. I don't know. Like
how interesting. You mean like they're floating signifiers? They become floating signifiers.
It's not even floating signifiers. They just become shorthand. And it's like, you know, before it was shorthand for this, and now it's shorthand for this and this. And now it's shorthand for this and this and this. And it's like, I'm barely saying any words now. Everything's just like, fuck, fuck, fuck. Like it doesn't even, you know what I mean? Like it's not even like expressive. It doesn't even like make sense. I don't know. It's definitely.
So it's a way of bypassing words. Well, actually,
I guess it's like I'm searching for the word. Maybe I don't even know. I honestly am not 100% sure on where
but
that's coming
interesting
from.
in our times, because there is a breakdown of verbal language in general with this overuse of words in the internet. I mean, people say that there's more and more images, but actually there's all these words.
Quite a lot of words. There's a lot of words out there.
Yeah, quite a lot of words. So I read in your interviews that you sometimes speak about my world as the traditional art world. I find that so weird because
what would you call it?
Well,
the art world, just the art world.
Yeah, well, I don't usually use the words anyway, art world, because to me, the art world is almost a derogatory term. It means parties and all these rich collectors with their special stuff and you know, Basel Art Fair is the art world, and that's.
You don't like Art Basel?
Oh, I hate Art Basel.
That's very interesting. Wait, why do you hate it?
Okay, well, don't tell anybody in the art world, because that will damage me. That will damage me. Because there's a
wait. Here, one question before you say this. Do you go to it all the time?
Of course.
Every year?
Of course.
That's very interesting, but you hate it.
Of course.
Okay, why do you hate it?
Going to the dentist or something, or you know, or going to some, you know, it can be pleasurable to take the car and go shopping to the shopping mall, but it's not exactly like going to see a Lars von Trier movie or going to an artist studio or writing an essay.
Why do you hate it though?
Because it has, because it's not the way that art should be experienced and seen. Every artist makes works in a way they somehow know who their audience is, and how it should be experienced. And I'm very well known for finding really weird spaces for people to do things in. And it's like matching the person, but it doesn't have to be a physical space. It can be a virtual space, can be a series of letters being sent back and forth. It can be physical, but the idea that you can take any artwork and put it in a 4x4 meter stand, you know, a painting, and I see these paintings, they're crying. They're crying. It's kind of like that movie, What Women Want, but it's what paintings want, or what sculptures want. And the artwork would like to be experienced in a certain way. You know, I mean, why would we be looking at a Beeple, you know, I don't know, with a really bad broken screen and you can't see the colors and you can't, so it's just wrong. So it's almost as if they transformed the artworks into NFTs, even though they're analog NFTs. When you take a fresco by Giotto out of the chapel and tear it off the wall and put it in some place.
Gas
It's
station.
not Giotto. It's not Giotto.
Gotcha. That's interesting. So you just, so full disclosure, I've never been to, like, I've been down to Miami during it, but I've never been to the actual like fair part of it.
Basel.
The Basel. I've never been to that. But I can see what you're saying. If it just kind of feels like it's like the worst place for actually viewing artwork, like that to me would be kind of like depressing or whatever.
So to answer your question about the art world, I wouldn't call it the art world. I mean, when I say the art world, I mean that world. So it's about parties,
the commerce piece of it.
Commerce and parties and power relations going on. But in fact, when you say the traditional art world, and I think most of the digital art world people think that the art world is that, but actually there's something else going on in the art world, which is separate from the art world. I mean, Maurizio Cattelan, he puts his banana with the scotch tape, which you quoted in your Beeple thing, in Miami Basel, because he's commenting on the idiotic, but that's not the great, you know, I mean, it is the great Cattelan. It's like Damien, you know, when Damien makes his sculptures from the undersea, the found sculptures, but when Damien does something, but he always says that I'm kind of stuck in the 20th century, but what can I do? You know, I can't do anything about it. But what I mean is Cattelan, you know, when he does something like, we have the largest collection of Cattelan, by the way, at the Castello di Rivoli, because we did his first show and so forth in 1997. When he does the horse that was hanging with the long legs, it's a sort of a monument or an elegy to the 20th century, to the catastrophe that heroics of, you know.
I don't know if I've seen that. I'm not sure I've seen that actually.
Oh, you should look Cattelan horse and you'll come up with our museum, a picture of our museum with the horse. It's not one horse. It's made of various horses. That's how the legs are long.
Oh, really? That's crazy.
It's a sort of an elegy to the 20th century. You know, early 20th century avant-garde created the so-called mobile, Rodchenko during the Russian Revolution period. They said that sculpture should move. So the hanging sculpture, which then passed into the United States with Alexander Calder and his mobiles. But so basically Cattelan was saying, well, that's the end of the mobiles.
That's crazy. That is a sweet piece.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I answered sort of your question about art world, but could you tell me why? But the last thing I would think is that I'm traditional, you know? So
no. See, when I say traditional art world, I mean, honestly, everything, all the stuff you're saying, Art Basel. I don't even know what the hell Art Basel is personally. It's like I have an idea of what it is, but I've never been to it, so I don't even know what the hell that is. I'm more saying everything but digital art. Right. That's what I kind of mean. So I mean like the museums and the more academic things and the sort of like serious stuff and the bullshit, whatever, commercial stuff. I just honestly am using it as like everything but this thing that's sort of
Okay.
new and people don't know how it fits into, you know, the rest of the world.
Right. But in that traditional art world, there are some artists who do things that are only digital. For example, we did an exhibition of an artist called Ed Atkins. He doesn't put his stuff, he doesn't upload the stuff onto the digital platforms, but it's all done on his laptop. If you look it up, you know, look him up. But then he'll want his videos to be shown as big videos on walls inside spaces. But they're talking about CGI, you know, and computer graphics. They're talking about what a person is, if a person is just a skin that you can buy and move around. So there are artists.
But see, come back to my definition of digital art, that would not be digital art because it was not primarily sort of like distributed through the internet for people to sort of like view.
Okay.
If he's not putting it on the platforms, it's more meant for like museums. It's digital, but it's more meant for like, again, the traditional art world. That's where it's being viewed. That's sort of like contact versus sort of like something that is more, I guess, populist, where it's just sort of like, I drew this thing and I put it out to everybody sort of without context, without sort of like, you know.
Okay. So
it's just, I look at it differently, you know what I mean? Even though it might be some of the same tools.
Okay, so what you said before, you said digital art is art made solely with digital tools. You're actually qualifying
mostly with digital tools.
But you're qualifying it, and you're saying, and that is also vehicled within the digital.
It's sort of distributed through the internet. So it's distributed to like a bunch of people through sort of like, you know, popular sort of like mechanisms and platforms.
Okay, well then that brings you close to Andy Warhol again. But let me ask you, then why in the world would you like, as you've stated in certain interviews, to be at the MoMA or to be in the so-called traditional art world? Well,
because I'm already at the other thing, so why not have both of them?
Oh, I see. It's expanding.
Yeah. It's honestly, well, and I think it's to me, it's interesting. Obviously, it's sort of like all digital artists would like to be in the MoMA, if they're being honest. Like, come on, what are we talking about? Like, that's like a huge honor, and I think it's another level of sort of like, I don't know, is shorthand for that this is important, you know, that it's like you're in a museum, that this is, you know, good, this is important. I mean, whatever the hell that means. I think that's why, you know, I would want to be in like something like that. It's just because I think it would be one, nobody's knocking down the door to let me in. So that's another reason I want to get in.
Well, you know, that happened various times to American artists. It's interesting. If you look at the history of American contemporary art, for example, Bruce Nauman, Bruce Nauman was invited to European museums before he was accepted in the American art world. That's also happened to conceptual art. It happened to Lawrence Weiner and Joseph Kosuth, who were basically saying that the concept of the artwork is the artwork. That was not accepted in the American art world. It had to be recognized first in Europe, and then it went back. I don't know why, but it has happened several times.
Honestly, I think it's probably just because I think people in Europe are just a bit more honestly open-minded, and I think people in fucking the United States are closed-minded as hell.
Well, it's possible, but it might just be that people like something from very far, you know?
That could be. Yeah, it could be that it's sort of like it has some sort of exotic feeling when it's coming from, you know, and then it's like, I'm from here, guys, what the fuck?
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Now, this, I think we've a little bit, I'm going to go into some questions now that are a little bit about this the financial issue. In other words, are your drawings and images and videos that you make for yourself, I think you distinguish my art from my work, in the sense if you're working for Justin Bieber or something, that's your work. Whereas if you just do it with no motive, direct utility, then
Yep.
it's your art. So,
Yep.
but is your art, I mean, do you think the artwork is in those images and videos per se, or is it also in the financial distribution of it? I mean, I think your answer is different from that either or, but
Nah, not really. Honestly, no. I don't think the artwork is in the financial distribution of it.
Maybe I made a mistake. Just a minute. I didn't really mean only financial in sense of Ethereum and
Sure.
I meant financial almost in the sense of numerological, in the numbers. In other words, the structure and the system within which it goes with the 1,000,008 followers or whatever followers, hundreds of thousands of followers. Those are numbers. I use financial, I meant in general, whether it's Ethereum or dollars or people or followers or comments. Is the artwork in that structural relationship with those numbers, or is it in the images themselves and the videos, or in both?
That's a very good question. Honestly, I think I try not to pay attention to that stuff. I think that stuff is a bit of a distraction, to be quite honest. I think how many likes something has or how much this sold for, like that to me has nothing to do with the artwork. The artwork is whatever the fuck I did. And from there, it's just somebody buys it. They don't fucking buy it again. I made all this stuff, for over a decade with no thought of anybody buying it. I made it because I wanted to make it. And it was just like, that's it. I want to fucking make this stuff. I'm trying to make something that I've never seen before. And so that's it. And sort of the other stuff is very much to me a distraction from the making the work.
But you did say a minute ago that the fact that it's distributed and out there was somehow important.
Well, that's more just how I define it. It's not so much to me necessarily, I guess. It's a piece of it, and I guess it is something I sort of think about. I think about that it's going to be distributed through that, but I don't think about sort of monetarily what happens, or sort of how many likes does this get, or sort of things like that. That's how it's distributed, and then it's sort of distributed and it's done. That it's sort of then it becomes its own thing on the internet, and then it kind of takes a life of its own, which I think is another kind of interesting through that a lot of this stuff I'm giving away for free and allowing people to sort of remix and do what they want with it. And so it it's almost born from there, and then it just kind of goes. And so and then it changes forms, and after that it doesn't even really feel like it's mine. It feels like it's if somebody takes my stuff and I release a bunch of clips and stuff like that, when I see those displayed somewhere else, it does not feel like my work, even though it's well, I made that exact video. If I didn't put it there, if somebody else took my thing, they found it on the internet, then they took it and they put it there, it actually feels way more like their thing than my thing.
Even if it's not changed?
Even if it's not changed, it's oh, there's my thing, but it doesn't really feel like my thing. It feels like the thing itself, the video itself, found its way to there. It's weird to describe, but it feels like it sort of found it's its own thing, and it kind of found its way there.
You mean like a child?
Kind of, yes. Honestly, it's kind of I kind of put it out, and from there it's sort of I very much believe you post something on the internet and it belongs to the fucking internet. It's gonna do it as is. There's no policing it. There's no take my thing off the internet. It's what the fuck are you talking about?
So you don't believe in the copyright laws?
I don't like copyright laws that much, because I come from more of a sort of kind of, I don't know, just things being open source. I have a computer science degree, and I think that idea of open source and just making something and then giving it away and let people build on that and they give that away, that I think is a very sort of interesting idea applied to art. So Yeah, I don't think there's any right or wrong answers with copyright laws, but I do not like copyright laws that
But
much.
in a way, what I don't get now is this whole NFT question, because the NFT is the opposite. That's actually copywriting something in a way.
I mean, I still own the copyright of those like images. They just own the like token.
Well, what is the token then? What is it?
So the token is just a proof of ownership, and it points to a thing. They definitely do not own the copyright, for sure.
Well, then, what can they do with that ownership? So it's just like
it's like a painting. In my understanding, when you buy a painting, you do not buy the copyright. You're buying like a painting or whatever, and so you can display the painting and you say, "I own the painting," but you do not own the copyright for that image. At least that is my understanding.
No. Wait. Wait. We have to unpack that for a second.
I could be maybe I'm wrong there. That is
no. So copyright is the copyright over the image of the painting. So you can the photograph of the painting.
Sure.
Is the copyright belongs to the artist or the estate for 70 years after the death.
Yep.
And it partially can be owned also by the photographer who took the photograph until 70 years after the death. But that's the photograph of the painting. The actual painting is property of the person who, I mean.
So what if the person who owns it took another photograph of it?
No, the copyright of the image is always the artist.
So, I mean, it kind of, to me, seems somewhat similar. Like, look at the painting itself as like the token. It's sort of like you have that token and you can display it, but you can't take and build new things off of that to sort of like, well, I want to take this painting and put it on a t-shirt.
No, I don't think you can make that analogy because it's the opposite. I mean, the photograph of the painting is really not the painting. Whereas it's like when you say the NFT is not the artwork.
I don't think it is the artwork.
Exactly. So the NFT is not the artwork, and the photograph of the painting is not the painting. It's kind of the opposite of what you're saying, because it's
I see what you're saying. Yeah, the painting is the artwork.
Yeah.
But the NFT is not the artwork. Yeah, it's not quite the same. Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's honestly that piece of it really needs some work and some clarification, because it's also the terms legally are different wherever you buy it. If you buy it on Super Rare, you buy it on Nifty Gateway, you buy it on whatever, they all have their own different terms. That's what governs what you have with the token. There's no uniform answer.
Wow.
And so they're similar, but they're not the same. And so people don't know that, and that really needs some more work, like industry-wise, to be quite honest, and education too, because also most people think they own the copyright, or at least a lot of people think that, oh, I own the copyright. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, of course.
You don't.
No, of course. But still, your vision, which is very much of putting things out in the world and all of that, doesn't really seem to match up with the ideology behind NFTs.
Yeah, I think it actually does, because I think with NFTs, I'm still going to give this work away for free, because it's one of these things where even though if you own the NFT, it's still like, it's sort of like, to me, I look at it as like a sort of, when somebody buys a piece of work like that, I look at it as sort of like, okay, we're entering into a relationship where we both want to see like what is best for this work. Like, is that licensing it to something? And then, okay, let's split that or whatever. Let's make this image as popular as possible. That's what's going to be best for you monetarily as the collector. That's what's going to be best for me monetarily as the artist. And so I look at it as sort of like, okay, if you buy something of mine, then we're sort of in this together, in a relationship of, do you want to do this thing? If you're just like, nah, I don't want to fucking copyright it for anything, I would just be like, okay, that's fine, we won't copyright it for anything.
But for example, Mr. Vignesh, whatever, Metakoven,
yep,
he now still owns the Everydays. He didn't sell it.
Yep.
But he could sell it.
Yep.
And then you don't have a relationship with whoever it is who bought it.
Then I would not have it with him. I would have it with the new person and be like, okay, well, now you own this thing. Now, okay, what do you want to do with it? And the same goes with like displaying it too. How do you want to display it? What do you want me to make you something for it? A certain way of displaying it? Like, I think I look at the NFT as more of like think of it almost as a subscription to that piece of artwork. That it's sort of like, okay, you hold this subscription. We're in a relationship now. What can I do to sort of like add value to that piece of artwork within sort of like reason of like, what I can do.
But if you wanted to show the everydays at MoMA, let's say, or in a weird castle on the top of a hill on the way to France, you wouldn't need to ask the owner of the NFT, you just said, because you.
I wouldn't need to, but to me, it's sort of like, okay, well, he paid a bunch of money for it, so it's kind of like.
So it's kind of.
I could be like, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna show it, but I would definitely not do that.
Okay.
Unless I absolutely had to. If this guy was like, no, I don't want to show it. It's like, okay, well.
So you mean that you have an ethical commitment, sort of.
I see honestly the collector is sort of like a person who like, took their hard-earned money and sort of like is supporting me as an artist. And I'm gonna like, I would like to see, they didn't have to do that. And so I look at it as like, okay, we're on the same team here. Like you obviously invested in my artwork, you're interested in me or whatever. And so, I want to make sure you're happy and like, I'm not like pissing you off or this or that. So I look at it as like, we're on the same sort of like team, and our interests are aligned.
Okay, I got it now. But your work was way before the NFTs. I mean, your first NFT drops were in October.
Yep.
Of last year. So this is very new to you too.
Very new. The idea of collectors, this is still like something I'm very, very much processing and sort of.
Yeah, of course. A question, you said in an article that you changed the money, whatever part you received in Ethereum into dollars. You did that. So you're not a particularly, how do you say, you're not particularly.
Crypto dude?
Yeah, crypto.
I don't give any shit about crypto. I've got like no crypto. Like people be like, this is just to pump up Bitcoin. It's like, I can give a shit less about Bitcoin. I own almost no Bitcoin. I don't give a crap. Like, I'm actually quite conservative with investing. And so it was like, this Ethereum's going crazy. It's like, get it the hell out of that. This is like freaking just gambling. It's like, no. I got some of it in Ethereum, but it's like, it's not, no. I had very, very little Ethereum before learning of NFTs. I am in no way give any, and to be honest, NFTs have, in my opinion, nothing to do with crypto. Nothing to do with crypto.
Really?
That's like, no. NFT is proving ownership, period. The blockchain piece of it is the technology to prove ownership. That's it. Like buying it with crypto, that just happens to be the easiest way to buy it right now because it uses the same technology. But like in the future, I'm almost positive NFTs will have nothing to do with crypto because it's just literally like.
So basically you can use the blockchain technology with dollars.
Yes. That it's just sort of like, okay, yeah, you're just proof of ownership. That can be with dollars. It has nothing to do with Ethereum. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. And I think it will move further and further away from that, to be honest.
Well, I'm almost finished with this series of questions about the money things, but just to understand how it worked, did Christie's approach you or did Maker's Place approach you and approach Christie's? How did that happen?
Sure. So Maker's Place had some contact at Christie's, and they kind of, it sounds like they kept bugging them, being like, oh, you got to check out this NFT thing, Finally, Christie's said, okay, Maker's Place, we'll do a drop with you or a releaser with you, auction with you. Let us know who you would like to do that with. And because I had a huge sale in December of 3.5 million, I was like the most popular person in the space by far. And so they came to me and said, okay, we'd like you to sort of do this. So Maker's Place was kind of in the middle. And, you know, to be honest, at first they kind of acted like, oh, Christie doesn't want to talk to you. Like they tried to like kind of insert themselves. And then as soon as I started talking to Christie's, it's like, well, it seems like they want to talk to me directly. It seems like they want to talk. And so it's like, yeah, then it's like now kind of Maker's Place will be kind of like.
Okay. I'm going to skip the next one because from what you answered, there's no point. I was going to ask you about the tulip mania and the first recorded speculative bubble in the 1600s.
That's very interesting. I actually feel like I need to go back and read more about that because I do find that to be such a like fascinating historical thing that everybody just gets super jacked on these
tulips.
And they're just like, it's so crazy. Like that is just like, to me, that's just such an interesting thing. That, yeah.
Okay, now I finished with all that money questions, but the next one was, why is it that your website? Well, I noticed something, which is that your website is not as updated in the everydays. I mean, the last one is like January 6th.
It's literally just laziness of updating the website because it's
really?
such a pain in the ass. Just such a pain. And I posted so many places already. Like every day I posted it. Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook.
Well, that's my next sub question. Why is it that for example, the image right now on your Instagram, it's this one, but on Tumblr, it doesn't have the two guys.
So there's a very specific reason for that. And actually, you might be the first person who's actually formally asked me about that. So again, goes back to the rules. It's got to be done by midnight. It's got to be done and posted by midnight. And so the Tumblr version, and this has evolved too. And so my current thinking, which is actually pretty recent, just in the last sort of week or two, I just thought of this. The Tumblr version, if you look at the Tumblr version, it's usually like a shittier version of the picture or a version with like less stuff or just like less produced, whatever.
No blood on the bunny.
No blood on the bunny. There you go. So that is my kind of like sort of backup, that it's sort of like, okay, I don't want to miss a day. I do not want to like stop the like streak. And so I don't want to push it right till midnight. And so I usually do these things late, like sort of like at night or whatever. And so what I do is I'll get it to a certain point and then I'll just post it on Tumblr. Then it's just like, okay, it's done for the day. It's posted. Now I'm going to make it better right up until midnight. And so I've been working, if you look at the timestamp, just recently, this is more recently, right up until 11:59. Look at that same picture on Twitter. It was posted at 11:59 because I literally worked up right until 11:59 to like make it better then. I had one in case the power goes out, I'm not going to like miss my day. But I've got this other one that it's like I really want to spend more time on it to like make it better or whatever. And so I think moving forward, what I'm going to actually do is do a picture very quickly in like 2 minutes to show people that it's like, well, you can make something in 2 minutes. And you spend longer, you can definitely make something better. But there's no excuse to not saying, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to create art today. It's like bullshit. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You can make something. It's not going to be great, but it will be something. And I think that is a big piece of this that I think people missed, is the like practice and the getting back to like creating art for the sake of creating art and not being so like in your fucking head, and just like the creation aspect of it and the practice aspect of it. Like that is a big piece of it that I think people are missing.
Well, that's interesting. What comes back to my mind again and again is, there's something, do you know what is called the spiritual exercises of, in many Catholic practices, in many different monk things, there are the Benedictine rule of the first monasteries.
I should know this as I went to Catholic school for.
Exactly. Well, that's why it just came back to me. Well, Italy is a primarily Catholic country. Of course, there's all the minorities, Jewish minority, Protestant minority, Islamic now in the last 50 years after, mainly after World War II, minority. So there's everything, but it's primarily Catholic. And so we know a lot about this stuff. And no, when you were talking, it reminds me of the Benedictine rule on the one hand. So at 6 a.m. you do this, at 4 a.m. you wake up, and every single monastery that was Benedictine had it. And it's really, ora et labora. So there's something that evidently must be in your background that you might not even remember, that gives value, attributes value to this kind of order. And what might be interesting is that the digital world, is such a fluid world, liquid, they say liquid world, that maybe there's a sense of falling apart of the subject or something if you don't create this order in a way.
Maybe. For me, I don't know that it's necessarily the order. I think it's just a way to sort of, it's just really about the improvement and the sort of it's about the practice, and it's about the improvement each day versus trying to sort of just kind of cram and okay, I'm gonna get that. It's really about the kind of practicing and practicing to get better.
Yeah, but I think the word order in English has a bad vibe, bad connotation.
Maybe.
But maybe it's not. I think it's close to what you're saying, describing something about practice, in the Benedictine rule, but also in the so-called spiritual exercises, had to do with improving somehow.
Sure.
But anyway, that was it just came to me. This is a question that also might not be of any interest to you. Back on the business of the meta world, there's this thing, the metaverse, and trying to make money and do things like open up digital museums on the metaverse. What do you think of those?
It's I'm way more interested in trying to bring digital things into the physical world than trying to put my physical self into the digital world. I already feel like we're enough in the fucking digital world all goddamn day. How can we take this digital art, and make it physical? Way more interested in that.
Okay, great. Well, that was the next question. How do you imagine your work displayed in a physical?
That's the one thing that I think people are really missing with NFTs, because they're well, it's nothing. It's you're just buying nothing, and it's no, you're buying an artwork that can take any form. It doesn't have to just take one form. When you buy a painting, it has one form. It's a painting. It's never going to change. Nothing's ever going to be different about it. It's going to slowly decay over hundreds of years. Versus if you have something digital, that's not going anywhere. It's in the fucking cloud. It's in the ether, and it can take a bunch of different forms, and it will come into the physical world in one way.
But I'm asking you, I know you said that in an interview, and that's why I asked the question, how do you imagine it? Or should it be?
Well, you will see. You will see. The next versions of that. I think there's a lot of room for iterating on that, and sort of that is the kind of next way my work is going to push forward, is different ways to display things, because screens are very boring. Everybody's phone looks exactly the same. It's a black rectangle. There's a bunch of different ways, but my work would be some of it will be physical, obviously these physical pieces or whatever, and there will be more. That's what we're working to expand, make more better physical pieces or whatever. So right now, again, this is just something I started 3 months ago, so I'm very new to sort of making physical objects with digital art, very new
of digital printing.
But that's what I'm very interested in.
Yeah, but you're thinking of printing digitally.
Yeah, not necessarily printing digitally. These are like screens. So like having like screens like this that are sort of like in your house and like things like that, like this is obviously, you know, a video screen. I think doing things like that are make the work still feel very digital, and in a way that, you know, it feels native to how it was made. Seeing it on
Is
a
that a
screen.
screen?
Yeah, yeah, this is a screen. It's kind of glitching out right now, but yeah, this is a screen. If you see, it's like moving.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this sort of like takes the everyday picture and sort of slowly fades through different like sections of it to show the like detail of it. So you can see it like faded to like the other like picture here. And it's meant to sort of like be a passive thing in your environment, because that's the thing. We're so used to with digital art, you have to like actively look at it. Okay, I clicked on it, then the thing shows up in my face. There's no, I can't really think of a way that you're just passively enjoying digital art in the way you would a painting. You don't like choose to like, okay, I'm going to look at the painting, or I'm not going to look at that painting today. Like, you don't choose that. It's just part of your environment, and it's just slowly affecting you and just slowly like it's there. I think that is what we can do with digital art, and people will look at it very differently when you do that. When it's just in your environment.
That makes it, that's great. That's a wonderful intuition. So to make it more, to create the passivity of our life, like when we're walking on the top of a mountain, you're not like looking at that flower, but it's a habitat.
Just there.
It's a kind of a habitat.
And I think interesting bringing digital artwork into your life like that in interesting ways. And again, this is just very much version 1. There's a bunch of different interesting sort of physical ways that this can come into your sort of like.
You have to plug that thing in.
So it plugs in normally, then it lasts maybe like 2 hours on like a charge or whatever, but it's got no interface. It just literally, you just take it out of the box, it turns on immediately. There's nothing to change. There's nothing. These come with it's not signed, but like a signed, like sort of like that.
You would put these small objects in a museum?
I think they could be. Yeah, I think they could be in like a bunch of like cases, that you could have like a bunch of cases. That's one way. The other way is making a print of like a digital art, which I did that before. I made like a canvas I've made canvases, like massive canvases of the everydays. And then I think the other way you could do it is with projectors. You can do a lot of interesting things projecting like a massive image of the like digital art. So it can be, or you could set up, you know, a bunch of TVs. There's all different ways that you could do it, and they each are going to be kind of different. But that's the thing. The artwork itself is the same. It's just it can be displayed in different ways, and those different ways.
I understand. Something occurred to me, which is a reverse perspective on the question of the museum. I mean, one thing is the translation of these into something in the museum. Another way of thinking about it is how a museum in a place that's very far from where you are might influence how you and what you make in your digital art.
That's the thing. I can sort of very easily work anywhere. Like that piece was not done at my house. It was done over at my brother's house last night. And the piece before, I think it was the piece before, maybe it was the one before that. It was done in an airport lounge, because it's like, oh shit, gotta get it done. We're doing it here. Like that's it. And so it's like one of these things where it's not, the studio goes wherever the computer goes. Yeah. And so I could easily do that, what you're talking about.
No, I'm just thinking as an experiment, you know, like a scientific experiment. Like what happens if there's enough time where your eyes and your dreams are being connotated by something that's very, very
different. Usually, honestly, when I go to Europe and, you know, again, travel quite a bit, like the pictures would be like I go to a museum, and it would like very much be influenced by like the things I saw that day.
So there's the two, maybe both directions should be explored. One direction is like incoming into the museum. The other direction is outgoing from the museum back into the world. I think we're running. You might need a few minutes between now and your next.
I'm good. Well, it's a call. It's fine. He's good.
Okay. I did want to just talk about the question of the commitment of time and the everyday. And I wanted you to know if you were aware, I mean, aside from the guy who studied at the Royal College and who did everydays for a while, Tom something or other, which I looked him up.
Oh, Tom Judd.
Yeah. Aside from that, I was wondering if you were aware of an artist, there's several artworks that have had this format. You know, one was Roman Opalka, who actually I knew personally. He died some years ago, but he was an extraordinary artist. He was a French-Polish artist. He was born in 1931. And in 1965, he decided to commit to the following project, which is that he would paint with a white paintbrush, white paint on a black canvas, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, new line, 10, 100,000, 200,000, 53, blah, 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 till the end of that painting. And at the end of the day, he took a photograph of himself, always the same form, photograph. And then the next day, he's continued where he had left off at that number and adding 1% more white paint to the black background, so that he was going towards white on white and infinity as a number. It's a beautiful project.
That's very interesting. That's super interesting. So wait, was he doing a series of paintings?
Yeah, he started in 1965 and he ended in 2011.
Wow.
Because he died. And if you're a connoisseur of Opalka, you can actually tell, you know, like I can see a certain gray and I'll say, oh, that's a painting from like the 80s, or that's a painting from the 70s. Because it's harder and harder to read the numbers. But anyway,
that's insane. That's super cool.
He was great. So I thought I was gonna ask you about Opalka, and maybe that was part of my you know, getting you up to date on our world. But there are other artists, like for example, a Chinese American called Tichin Xie. He did these 1 year long performances. Like there was one where he decided that he would tick the clock.
I saw. Somebody had showed me that very recently. I did not know about him either. Like he punched a clock or whatever.
Yeah, but
and he like another one where he's in like a cell or something. A thing. Yeah, that guy was super cool. Like that was super interesting. I would like to read more about that guy because all of his things were like just super cool. Like the tied himself together with the like other. Super cool. Like I love that.
Great. He was great. And then at a certain point, he stopped making art. And then when I was a young
he was just like, I'm done. Like I'm just
I'm done. Except that he did one thing more. So it was great. He was a great person. But there's a series of artworks that I would have told you about that have to do with this time thing. And so I guess that could be, since it's 3 minutes to the 4:30, that could be the last point, you know, about time. So not just the commitment, but the time, you know, duration and time and what, how you experience that in your work. And maybe I should also not ask that because we're running out of time. And therefore,
no, I think that is like kind of like a sort of like more like I am thinking about this work on a much bigger time scale. Like I'm thinking about this work, and when I say my work is crap, it's because I look at it, I'm not just comparing it to the people today, I'm comparing it to all art. And it's sort of like, okay, well, I mean, do you think that picture behind you is as good as like a fucking, you know, Rembrandt? Of course not. That's why I call it crap. And so and that's where the practice is this project, this everyday project. Again, I'm 39. This is not remotely done. I'm going to do this until I like die. That's my thought right now. So I've got, God willing, many years of this project. I honestly didn't think anybody would give a shit about this project until I hit 20 years. Then I thought people might sort of like, wait, okay, he's been doing this for 20 years. Like, hey, what's going on here? Like, I thought people might pay some attention to it. But yeah, it's very much a work in progress, and it's not remotely done. And so I'm definitely looking at things on a very, very
long time scale.
long time scale. So
Well, that's
long
great.
time scale, well past my life too. And so, you know, that's affecting how I think about what I'm selling, how I'm selling it, all of these things. So yeah, that is definitely is an aspect of the art, is sort of like looking at it, you know, through that lens. But
wonderful. Yeah. Well, I'm extremely happy that we had this time.
Yeah, me too. It was super, you know, wonderful. Super interesting to see your perspective on this, because it's sort of very different. And honestly, these were like very, very good questions compared to, you know, a lot of the stuff that I've been answering is just all this shit about NFTs. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ, I give a fuck about NFTs. Like, it's, oh my God, okay, we get it. NFTs. Jesus Christ. That would be super awesome. Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.